What does it take to revolutionize victim-centered policing and tackle online human trafficking globally? We are going to find out. This is Jonathan Kirsting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council and TechVibe Radio. And in this episode, we are thrilled to welcome Cara Jones, co-founder of Marinus Analytics, for an amazing conversation about how their cutting-edge technologies are saving lives and supporting public safety agencies literally around the world. If you keep on listening, you're going to hear how Cara recently delivered testimony at a House subcommittee, solidifying Marinus as a leader in leveraging advanced tech to fight human trafficking. Plus, you're going to learn how a thesis project turned into Marinus's Traffic Jam, which is a groundbreaking tool helping agencies on 3 continents combat trafficking. And of course, we're going to give you a dose of Pittsburgh Pride. You're going to discover how this game-changing company spun out of Carnegie Mellon's Robotics Institute and is proving that Pittsburgh is indeed a powerhouse of tech and innovation. So keep on listening, everybody. I'm excited to jump into the conversation with Cara right now. Cara, thank you so much for joining me here in the Huntington Bank studios. I couldn't be more excited to talk about what Marinus Analytics is up to, and just your story in general is absolutely amazing, especially coming off of the heels of your House subcommittee testimony just this week. Like, what an amazing thing to happen. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk to me more about it. I'm just so excited to learn more today.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here, Jonathan. It's always really nice to connect. Most days I'm behind a computer screen, working as a computer engineer. And so to get out to Washington, D.C. on the Hill, and then now to have this follow up conversation, it's delightful. So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, we were just at the Tech Council. We were just so proud of you, of Marinus Analytics, of you, of being recognized at that expert level that you're at to provide this type of testimony. And before we kind of jump into what your testimony was and what Marinus does and the important work that you've been doing, just real fast, just give our listeners just the quick elevator pitch for what Marinus Analytics does. I can't do that justice.
Well, we're based right here in the North Side. So we're neighbors to the Pittsburgh Tech Council. We spun out of Carnegie Mellon Robotics Institute, the Auton Lab. Back in 2010, my co founder had an undergraduate thesis on prevention analytics to counter online trafficking. And from that academic work, a technology tool was developed for advancing victim centered policing. And so Marinus Analytics operates what's called Traffic Jam. It's a software as a service. And right here from Pittsburgh, we are supporting public safety agencies across 3 continents. And we have a London office as well. And so, 24/7, our technology is used to help pull insights from the online marketplace of commercial adult services to help with like on the ground investigations of commercial sexual exploitation and trafficking. So that in the online world, there's just these huge public marketplaces between providers and buyers of what we call adult services. And so we need like a third party lens into that data to pick up on vulnerability, control, exploitation, and it's all hiding in plain sight. And so just in the digital age, we need, purposely built tools to work with, online stream of information. And that's what we do. But it's kind of, we're kind of behind the scenes, but right here in Pittsburgh, we have this very important policing technology.
I mean, talk about important. First off, I don't think people just realize just how big of an issue this trafficking is. I didn't know this until I first met you guys, and this whole underworld going on that is just, I mean, crazy scary. And the fact that you have technology that can help get people out of this and pinpoint what's going on is just so cool. And the idea of using advanced AI in order to do this is kind of mind blowing to me. And I'm just so proud of what you guys do because this is taking technology and you are literally saving people's lives with this. And when you say something like you're on 3 continents, you got your office in London. And I think you also won this little thing called the AI X Prize back in the day for your work, which we think is just so cool.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, human trafficking exploitation is considered probably the second largest crime type in terms of profitability.
Really?
Humans can be used over and over again. That's their horrific nature. And
Yeah.
there isn't, unlike other crimes, there's a lack of evidence, and these victims are coerced, and groomed, and they aren't able to ask for help because of fear or maybe a lack of understanding of their rights. And the victims have highly complex needs. So this is a very difficult area for disruption, but it is considered, like the second largest, lucrative form of illicit profiteering. And compared to, other types of crimes, the prosecutions are far too low.
I was gonna
Mm.
say it's very few and far between on people actually being prosecuted, going to jail or whatever it is for committing these crimes.
Yeah, it's far too low. But it's something where, we see bright spots of, ways that we can serve, and we are highly motivated. I mean, we bring this like complete dedication to social impact and being in service to frontline champions who are really at the, directly helping these victims, directly pushing these, investigations forward, are driven to see the positive prosecution and justice being served. So, we're kind of behind the curtain, but we are super dedicated to be computer scientists in service to public safety. And in this journey, we were ahead of our time, especially when you think about the tools that police have available. In some countries, we were the first like cloud software as a service that had been procured. And we do this in like a formal contracting relationship. And that helps from, setting kind of the privacy security and ethical, boundaries around the work that we do. So, it's all like in a formal relationship that goes through a lot of due diligence and approval through the chain of command. And so that's, I feel that that's been a very, kind of productive model for us. And when we first started, we always had this vision of like a subscription. So we're bringing all this AI, started at Carnegie Mellon, and we've just continued to innovate, but it's the democratization of modern technology. Regardless if we're working with, federal agencies or kind of a local county, local municipality, it's just, a subscription. And then, over all these years, we've built up a sustainable model, but we very much do this for, for the social impact. And it's really a joy that we did something that was so kind of novel, but we actually here now are just, year after year sustained by our public safety agency subscribers. We built it up over the years. So we have about 225 agencies, and these agencies are at the forefront of modern slavery investigations, victim centered policing, trauma informed practices. And so public safety is just a massive fabric of jurisdictions and partnerships. But within like this large industry, we work with, these very specialized victims units and the human trafficking investigation task forces in the work that we do.
Yeah. Oh my god. See, this is why I can see you're asked to testify on the House subcommittee on cybersecurity, information technology, and government innovation. I mean, I can't think of anyone more informed and in the trenches as to what is going on. So tell me about this testimony. Can you maybe set the stage for me a little bit about like why the government was having you testify and maybe talk a little bit about some of your testimony?
Yes, absolutely. The topic was using modern tools to counter trafficking. It was an opportunity for us to reveal, what's the latest in research and development. And it's a bipartisan topic. So, it's refreshing to have, kind of like the parties come together and talk about, this important area. Like I said, I think we need to bring more attention to it because we've been 25 years since federal legislation recognized like the victimization of trafficking. It was in 2000 that the United States passed the Trafficking Victim Protection Act. And there's just more work to be done to, promote the momentum of disruption. And so it's just really nice to like come together and check in on where we're at with the latest technology. And I was on the panel we had the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. So they have funding appropriated by Congress. They're the major clearinghouse of missing children. They handle the child trafficking cyber tip line. We've worked with them and we donate access to Traffic Jam. They have a team of child trafficking investigators. They support all levels of public safety. So, on some of these child trafficking cases, they can step in and provide additional services to the police to help the cases. We also had Polaris, which is an NGO. For over 20 years. They had run the national trafficking hotline here in the United States, and they are heavily focused in the victim services coordination. And so, yeah, the 3 of us, we spoke. There was also the ranking member minor witness who's a former prosecutor with the U.S. Attorney's Office of Washington, D.C. He's a scholar on the subject of countering trafficking and teaches at Howard University, but he came out of the DOJ. He had a long career. And so it was a good mix of us. And so we had these centers of NGOs who are helping on the coordination of law enforcement and victim services. They have technology and tools to manage these cases. And then where we come in, I mean, a lot of our work helps initiate cases to a hidden crime. I mean, these
Right,
are
right, right. That's yeah, keep going. I'm sorry, keep
yeah,
going.
yeah. A big part of our work, which makes us unique and complementary, is that we can trigger investigations from the insights of the data. And that's what we call proactive safeguarding. So, again, the victims in many cases are not able to ask for help. But we look for anomalies and vulnerability and high risk insights in this like massive online marketplace. I mean, it's really to date, Traffic Jam has analyzed 1.3 billion records. It's more than
Back up.
any human.
1.3 billion records. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and that's the activity between, the buyers, the advertising between the providers and the buyers of commercial adult services. And this is an unregulated industry. And the mission here is not to criminalize, this industry at large. For the most part, we all recognize that, independent at will participation in this industry is not a public safety, you know, threat. But it's an unregulated space and vulnerable people are targeted and recruited and then exploited. And it's very difficult. It's a very tragic, life altering outcome for these victims. And so we have to figure out a way to be proactive. And so our technology, we spend a lot of research going back to my partner's undergraduate thesis. The whole theme along these years is to, how can we be more proactive to direct public safety in a proactive way? And, the victim centered policing units, they do safeguarding operations. They go undercover and they're almost doing welfare checks. And we kind of on an international level, we observe the best practices and we help disseminate them in our own trainings like in addition to the actual engineering and technology that we provide. The other thing that we do in this space is then on kind of the back end of investigations, we help tell the story through the data for evidential use. And so one of the things you want to help victims to corroborate their story. And so, and today in policing, intelligence analysts play a very important role in the case building. And they're using other technologies. But again, we were kind of at the forefront of harnessing like open source intelligence. But you want to start building up the story from different data streams that you can tap into. For a trafficking investigation, they're going to tap into the records from the marketplace. But there's the marketing, there's also like reviews. There's a lot of online commentary of that can be harnessed. There's financial payments, there's cell phone records, there's, images and videos. There's, kind of transportation, movement of money, reservations at hotels and motels. All of this, when it's harnessed, it tells like a timeline, it tells, geographic movement, it can help illustrate how many people were involved, who were the, kind of the controllers in these operations, which differ again from, kind of independent at will participation. And when we can harness that, there is this approach of evidence based prosecution where we build up the digital evidence of the story around the victim instead of putting all that expectation on the victim
I
to
love
have
that.
to.
That is so cool. The idea that it supports them and yeah, and it's that's amazing. That is such a difference in how you can then move forward, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, it's polycriminality. So when you get into the actual charges, human trafficking is just not one crime. And these victims are victims
Right.
of multiple crimes. And
Exactly.
so
Right.
you're building up charges. And when you have a lot of that evidence, sometimes, people will basically plea deal, in the process, which means it doesn't go to trial. That victim doesn't have to go on the stand and testify basically face to face against their exploiters. So all that digital evidence, it's really fundamental. And, we play like an important role on that end too.
That's amazing. I wonder if you could just maybe walk me through like a little bit of like a case study, maybe how like a law enforcement agency used Marinus analytics to find and catch someone
That's great.
trafficking.
I'll speak to two use cases, and
Okay.
this is really around the two like types of victims. Here in the United States, we have domestically a child trafficking crisis. It's been long standing. Our digital society, sadly, like there's just so much going on that like underage individuals can kind of be groomed and led into this space. Sometimes youth who are young, they can even do this themselves. Like they, from their peers or from traffickers,
Really?
they learn kind of the game
Wow.
and, but it's generally recognized that anyone under the age of 18 is a victim. That's part of like an international age of consent. And that was established like around the time that we put the federal legislation into place. So I'll talk about domestic child trafficking and then I'll talk about the plight of adults in kind of controlled networks. And that's
Okay.
something that's a big focus of us. So here domestically, like one of the big breakthroughs, and if I could say, Jonathan, the Pittsburgh Tech Council gave us an award, Tech 50,
Yeah.
for our being a service provider. And this was around this use case. So what we do
Fantastic.
for a long time, we recognized that child trafficking victims, kind of one of the vulnerabilities is being in the foster care system. And, the missing children out of foster care over the years, it was about 1 in 6 were, thought to have been trafficked in those journeys and experiences. So knowing that and having seen a lot of examples of runaways, I shouldn't even use the word runaways, but children who go missing from foster care ending up, finding like online sightings of them in this marketplace. So one of the things that we did going back a couple years ago is now we use technology to just proactively monitor missing people. And in this country, through the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, they run a large online database of the children who go missing. You might see some of those posters when you're on the turnpike or, you're at maybe the DMV. Sometimes they might show some of those posters. But there are about 20 websites in the United States. Now, if you go over to the other side of the state, like Philadelphia, the police have a very kind of well-maintained bulletin of missing people that come out of Philadelphia. So what we do is we watch these like there's about 20 sources across the country. Some of them are national, some of them are state, some of them are local. Just next door in Ohio, the Office of Attorney General has a very well-maintained missing persons bulletin. So in 2 years, our tool checked 60,000 missing reports. And, in this country, if I can I'm kind of going on in the statistics, but, around 600,000 people go missing every year, but most people are found within 24 hours.
Okay.
It's only about 1% who are persistently, chronically then missing.
And that
And,
1% a lot of people.
right. And then from all of that, then like maybe a subset get reported on posters. And so 60,000. So we did this like kind of 2-year look back recently this past summer. So our tool was able to proactively check and screen, we call it screening, 60,000 posters of missing people. 60,000 is more than any public safety person on the ground can manually do. That's beyond the point and click and check. So we have the computers doing this round the clock checking. Now, out of that 60,734 victims were identified, positive confirmed IDs. And
Wow.
I'll tell you a little bit more about who those people are. But
Okay.
but in those cases, especially with the children, they might be considered like haven't just gone absent, absconded, run away. But the reality is, for those identifications, these are sexually exploited victims, and this is a major federal felony. And when we can detect that one of those missing youth end up in the marketplace, it triggers a federal investigation. It triggers like the champions of human trafficking, countering human trafficking to respond to those cases. And one of the so demographics, 95% of that 734 were girls and young women. And that's why I get passionate
Of
because
course.
we want to help, like this we have to put more energy and resources, right, to support this community of vulnerable girls and women, and especially the girls coming out of the foster care system. And I'll tell you one heartbreaking story. When we first turned this on, one of the cases that came out was a 15-year-old, and we there were months and months of online activity because, we didn't know that she was out there until we turned it on. And here she was in the late stages of pregnancy. And at 15 years old, being sexually exploited for, financial gain of traffickers. And you can just see the progression of her pregnancy through these months of photographs. And she was recovered. And today, because we have this automated screening, as troubling as that story was, thinking we missed that. But now I know going forward, people will respond in days. Those frontline champions,
Mhm.
those types of cases will not languish for months being hidden in plain
Right,
sight. So
right.
now that's where that automated is a real breakthrough for us. And so it's been a long journey, but now like we're advancing the sophistication of policing so that if that happens again, where there's like just blatant photographs of children in the marketplace, that this system's going to catch it and bring it out.
Like, bring it to attention and then put an investigation, rescue that person, hopefully get the trafficker in jail. And like, oh my goodness, that's why it's like, this is so amazing when I think about the power of your technology. You mentioned like the 1.3 billion that records and everything like that. And as you do this, there's always a concern for safety and privacy and stuff like that. And so you have to walk a very fine line, but you guys have been doing that quite well. How do you maintain that balance and make sure you're able to maintain the privacy that we all demand in this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we think so carefully about the use case. We put all these components together. The data that we work with is almost all anonymous. It's very vague. There are a lot of imagery, and the imagery can contain faces. And that's probably where we get very sensitive about, privacy concerns.
Right.
But the way the tool wraps around the use cases, first of all, we don't share this data at large with anyone. This data is just within like our computer systems. And it's only through these like purposely built use cases on the front end that, we expose the data. And it's really, that fundamentally we're serving these specialized units in public safety and the NGOs who also support these cases. But so those are a couple of the guardrails. It's just, we think very carefully about the use case. And then, AI computing, if there's any inaccuracies in the models or the methods, we think very carefully about that use case. Could it have unintended harm? And really what we feel is that if the computing or the AI model is deficient, it really only results in us not being able to help, not that we could, harm
Interesting. Okay,
anyone.
that makes
So
sense. That makes sense.
that's where I think fundamentally we feel very confident. Early on, 2017, we were bringing AI to policing, but we felt very confident that we knew that we were underserving, and we still like I said, the prosecutions aren't high enough. We need to keep driving these prosecutions. So we want to bring, these, really the latest in computing to just do better, protect the civil rights of these exploited members of our community. So the other thing, the use case and just being careful about, preventing unintended harm. The other thing is just a lot of transparency, and you need to build trust. I mean, I think the whole dynamics of public safety is building trust.
That's
To
the
have
foundation,
trust of the public,
right? Yeah, 100%.
but we also have to build trust with our detectives and our analysts. And so we have to explain why the computer isn't connecting dots. In the image world, it's like a little bit more intuitive because you can just visually see results and you can see like have kind of an idea of how the computer, but we list all the scores, like kind of what does the computer think in terms of accuracy. And when we have other types of like risk indication, we clearly explain why do we think this is risky? Why does the computer think it's risky? And we learned from like all the vulnerability indicators that detectives share with us. And the trends change over time. But it's like a wealth of understanding from the experts in terms of what they would look for. And we just try to automate that at scale. But we have to be very transparent in terms of can't have any black boxes, making decisions. It's really the investigators are driving the, applied use. And as long as, we are very transparent on how the algorithms are making, to returning results, then it's so far, the time has shown that this is a very kind of ethical AI for good. And that's what I would recommend for other tech companies that are trying to, serve public safety, but to keep that use case boundaries and transparency top of mind.
It's such an amazing story, and to think about how this, came out of Pittsburgh for us, the Tech Council, of course, and we think that is absolutely fantastic, and we just can't, we can't put enough praise on you guys for the
Oh,
amazing work that you and your team have been doing to just, it's an amazing story from being able to get people safe.
well,
These
I appreciate the Pittsburgh ecosystem because I don't think we could have done this anywhere else. I mean, yeah, the fact that we wanted to harness all this technology for good, for, in service to the public sector, I got a tremendous amount of encouragement right here in Pittsburgh. And the Pittsburgh Tech Council has been very supportive for us. I think I've mentioned this to you once before, Jonathan, but like, for example, we were able to get our health insurance.
Yeah,
For our small
hey,
Z.
those are important
Those
things.
things.
Yes.
Yes, but those things are important actually to be able to be, like,
Awesome.
operational.
Appreciate that. That's awesome. We try to play a little role wherever we can to help you guys succeed. That's what we're all about. And we, like I said, we couldn't be more proud of the testimony that you provided this week, the work that you guys are doing, using some of the world's most advanced technology to literally save people's lives. So, I just can't thank you enough for stopping by and taking the time to tell us a little bit of that story. That's for sure, Cara. You are the best.
Aw, thank you, Jonathan. I'll take that motivation with me, and I just keep doing the
There you
keep
go.
that.
I
Yes,
love it.
thank you.
I love it. Very cool stuff. Hey, everybody, we just love telling stories like this at the Pittsburgh Tech Council. It's what we do. It just goes to show you amazing things are happening here right under our noses. We absolutely think it's fantastic. And this is Jonathan Kirsting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council and, of course, Tech Vibe Radio. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one.